the National Youth Development Agency board will have its first woman chairperson. The new board was announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa last week. The process was initially marked by delays and concerns that some of those who are vying for a position on the board had been red flagged by the State Security Agency. But what should we make of this newly appointed board? Well, let's bring in our guests, get you their perspective. Youth activist Nkanyiso Ngqulunga, Sizophila Mkhize is the ANC Youth League's national spokesperson. Also joining us for this discussion is the EFF Student Command President Mandla Shikwambana. To all three of our guests, thanks very much for your time and welcome to the program. Perhaps let me start with you, Nkanyiso. I mean, there had been all kinds of delays before getting us here. Was it worth it?
I believe not. It was not worth it at all, because understanding the importance of the NYDA in the country in terms of being a driving force for empowerment for young people, be it small businesses, providing assistance to young people in the townships and rural areas to ensure that they're really empowered and provided in adequate support and resource. So I think that the delay was unprecedented and unwarranted. But we have seen that these appointments, they are largely political charged appointments, of which concerns political interference that was alleged, in respect of the appointments. So the delays were really something that was something really not necessary, because we know that the country has so many young people that are capable to be on the NYDA board. And I think that the delays, as a result, they may have missed out on the board to be able to parade and take decisions for the country to go forward. We're under COVID. The NYDA was supposed to be championing and countering the empowerment drive for this high unemployment youth that's rapidly growing, and to assist the small businesses. So it was really not worth it. I want to reiterate that.
Mandla, Nkanyiso is flagging already an issue which had actually been a sticking point even with the previous process, this idea that the appointment of the board itself is too politically motivated, has too much political interference, perhaps I should say. Is that a sentiment you also share with this new board?
Thank you very much. Let me also greet your viewers. As the EFF Students Command and young people of South Africa, were very much disappointed on how these issues of appointing the board of NYDA has been handled. In fact, it's too much political. There's too much political interference of the top dogs of the so-called leaders of the ANC. We saw even how the board, it was actually appointed. It's actually a looting vehicle of some sort, of some cadres of the ANC who have been leading in some structures of the ANC. So to say that if their term is finished here, for example, in Youth League or SASCO or YCL, they then give them an opportunity to go and form part of NYDA as board members. And there's nothing that this NYDA is offering to the young people of South Africa as we speak now. Young people of South Africa are suffering, and while they are suffering like that, it takes time for a board to be appointed, because there are fights or infights within the ANC, because the ANC think that NYDA is their structure of some sort. That's why even you see the appointment of NYDA, it consists only of people or members of the ANC or former leaders of the structures of the ANC. We are very much disappointed as young people as to, but how is this board going to champion issues of young people? How is this board going to give us development as young people and bring us back to the society and bring us back to participate into the mainstream economy of this country, when the board itself, how it's been appointed, is too much central or political central, or focuses only in a certain political party, which is the ANC. So we are very much disappointed, and for myself, I don't even see a need for this NYDA, because this NYDA is doing nothing for young people. Young people are on the street. Young people are drinking. Young people are actually miserable. Young people, they've gave up. And this NYDA is not providing any solution. And the reason of this NYDA not to provide solution is because of this type of appointments that which we are seeing happening now.
Sizophila, let me bring you into the discussion. It appears that this board is facing a credibility crisis before they even start doing any real work, and much of it has to do with your mother body. Perception is still very much alive that the ANC is too involved in untoward ways in the appointment of these board members?
Thank you very much. Greetings to you, the guest, and your viewers. Look, one thing that I think I need to remind the public of is that the EFF or the EFF Student Command is an opposition party. So the job of an opposition party is to oppose whatever that the government does at the time.
Well, I mean, to be fair, and sorry to interrupt you there, Nkanyiso is really sharing some of those sentiments too. I don't imagine you saying that his perception is on the back of his political affiliation.
I don't think that his perception or his sentiments that he's showing are correct, because you cannot, I mean, the president, the person who appoints the board, is a politician. I do not understand how Nkanyiso and my other brother, Mandla, expect the president not to be political. And it is not true that the NYDA board consists of only ANC members or ANC Youth League people. It is not true. There is a DA person in the board who has been appointed. And it was worth it. I think I need to say that it was worth it that there was this delay. But when the board collapses, the offices of NYDA are not closed. The people that are studying through the Solomon Masango Scholarship Fund do not stop studying. So the work of the NYDA continued even when there was no board. The offices of the NYDA were not closed. Young people could go to the offices and get help that they wanted. So I don't think that it is fair on the people that work at the NYDA, on the officials that work on in the NYDA with the work that they've been doing, even during the pandemic. They had, I mean, the CEO, the people that are working in the NYDA had things that they were doing even during the pandemic, Kanye. So maybe you were not aware of it. I think you should start following all pages of the NYDA and you'll be aware of the work that the NYDA has been doing, even though there was a board becomes the leadership of the institution, which is NYDA, but the work has been done.
I'll give Nkanyiso an opportunity to respond in just a moment. I just want to go back to your initial remarks there, Sizophila. I mean, when you say that we should expect the president to be political, even in his discretion to appoint members of the NYDA board, what do you mean by that? In a context where this board itself, I'm sure you'll agree, is meant to be an apolitical structure that sees to the interests of all young people in the country.
The board is not a political structure. It's definitely not a political structure.
So how do we then agree that...
I'm struggling. Can I speak?
Sure.
I'm struggling with a thinking that says that there is a political interference in a process that is done by politicians. I mean, logically, that alone, I'm struggling to comprehend it. You can't expect a politician not to be political in doing their job, because they are politicians. So they'll obviously do their job. And in the NYDA, I said this the last time I was in Newzroom Afrika and we were discussing this thing of the NYDA. I said that there is a process of NYDA. So if my colleague Mandla, for instance, would have wanted to be in the NYDA, had to bring qualifications, had to apply, and had to be called and shortlisted. There are only 7 positions in the NYDA board. There are only 7 positions, and they've all been filled. There are other qualifying young people that did not make the cut, but there are only 7 positions. And what were we supposed to do? Probably extend the board from 7 to 11. What is it that was supposed to be done?
I mean, the perception that politicians can act in no way but in a political manner is a perception I think that will be lost to many people. But Nkanyiso, let me bring you back into the discussion. Speak to us about whether or not you get a sense that merit was considered enough in the appointment of these new board members. And I'm saying this on the back of criticism that emerged after the names were announced, that some names were missing despite the public being privy to the interviews, for instance, that took place for these positions.
I mean, my other panel member who just spoke now, she's being disingenuous to suggest that the process is not political charge. Yes, we all agree that the political party that is in government right now obviously does have an ultimate discretion to make those appointments. However, the establishment of NYDA in itself, using the Act of Parliament, renders the institution to be independent. So therefore, every process that is to be undertaken by Parliament and ultimately having to shortlist names to the president. The president exercises his power to therefore appoint the shortlisted names. And I think that power, the president was petitioned the first round of the interviews that were held due to concerns that were raised by civil society, that the process in itself, it looked like they had rubber-stamped the process, or they had went into selecting people who were known to be associated with the governing party instead of prioritizing qualifying candidates to be on the NYDA board. And I think that if we continue with this argument, I think it then renders the entire system useless, because the reason why we have the legislation that is in place is for the adherence to the legislation. So this is not to deny that there's no political influence involved. And then the second point is there had been so many complaints that the NYDA offices during COVID were closed or they were open occasionally, and the websites were not user-friendly, and all those issues that have been raised by mostly young people. So an outright dismissal of those legitimate concerns, I think, coming from young people, they do not really assist, in building institutional capacity, also building the integrity of the NYDA as an institution in itself. And I think that we are not so naive to believe that the list or the current short list, that the appointments that have been made by the president are not, also a political process, because we know and we've seen most of the names that are there, and we know their associations and we understand it better. However, the contrasting point is, well, in as much as we appreciate the transformative aspect of it, seeing a large number of women forming part of the NYDA board. But we do really raise concerns that if these types of appointments that are made with political considerations, to what extent do they then therefore exclude deserving candidates that are not associated with any political party? So I believe that it's a conversation that is very important to have, so that NYDA in itself can, in fact, build its own integrity, because as things stands now, I do not believe for a second that most young people in the townships have faith or belief that they are actually doing something. I mean, the President started a year's program to alleviate unemployment, and we haven't seen the NYDA being proactive. We haven't been furnished with the numbers as to how many numbers has the NYDA assisted the president in achieving that goal. So being dismissive and gaslighting the people, I think, does not really work, or it does little to assist the people on the ground.
So Manta, when this board was appointed, as I mentioned earlier, the process was at least a bit more different. In other words, we could see the interviews taking place, Parliament had a say, but it appears that wasn't good enough, at least to address some of the initial concerns even before the process started. Speak to us about what kind of built-in mechanisms can be considered now in order to ensure that we're not here again when the new board is appointed in a couple of years.
Thank you very much. It's a problem. Let me start by also putting it clear that I find it very difficult if my colleague will then want to reduce a sitting president of the country into a real, politics of saying that he's a politician. When he has to appoint, he has to be political and all those kinds of things. The moment you accept responsibility of being the president of the country, you cease to be a partisan. You cease to be too much involved into unnecessary politics that which this president of theirs is being subjected to now. So it's very much worrisome for if you come to a national TV tell us that the president ought to be political in the process of electing or appointing the board, then it seems like we've got a crisis. We still have a long way to go. The president of the state must be the president of the state. You are not leading a faction of the ANC, but you are leading the entire country. You ought to actually demonstrate that you are leading the whole country. So the issue here is one, the process of appointing the board on itself. We understand this time around it has involved the parliament and all those kind of things. But the issue here is one, is that the initial part of it, the process, how it starts, it's a process that which majority of our young people are not aware what is actually happening. They're not even aware that now we are going to have a new board of the NYDA. We are going to need new members of the board of NYDA, and we've got a number of young people qualified and competent who can lead this board outside political structures, so to say. So the issue is that we need to be transparent from the word go with the process of this NYDA. I heard her saying that no, it's a process where someone must give the qualifications and all. We all know it's a process, but it's a hidden process, because when it starts, you only find out that the closing date, it was this date. People have already submitted names, because those who are already there in the system, they talk to their own close friends and allies, and which happen to be the ANC company, and they exclude the nation. They exclude the majority part of our people who are capable enough to come and lead the board. So what we are saying is that in the next, but let me not talk about say the next time or whatsoever, because myself, I don't see the importance of this board. One, the purpose or the responsibility of the board or itself, or the responsibility of NYDA, is to make sure that they bring youth together and bring developmental programs of young people, by also assisting them with financial assistance and non-financial assistance, and also helping them to participate into the mainstream economy of this country. But now we have a situation here. When she says NYDA offices were not closed during COVID and so forth, that's a lie. We have been getting reports that these offices are not operating. And if they were working, then she must provide to us a proof as to how many people they've assisted so far, in terms of assisting them to apply for bursaries in the Institute of Higher Learning, assisting them to apply for acceptance of the universities, or for them to go and study in the universities of different colleges in the country, and also assisting them, young people to get jobs, assisting young people also with funding of their small businesses, because this is the mandate of NYDA, and there's nothing which is done by NYDA. She's just here to come and defend, and we are going to have crisis when we've got people who are not ready to face the fact and tell it the way it is, because there's nothing done in the NYDA. And the reason is that this thing is politicized, is political, as she said, that Ramaphosa is involved politically into this process.
Mandla, you're loud and clear. Sizophila, I don't want to rush you, so let's do this. I'm going to take a quick breather. When we come back, I'll get you an opportunity to have the final bite of the cherry as you respond to all these remarks. We're unpacking the legitimacy crisis, it appears, of the newly appointed board of the NYDA. Welcome back, and we continue with our discussion around the newly appointed board of the NYDA. And Sizophila Mkhize, you're the ANC Youth League's national spokesperson. There is a lot of questions around, I guess, the role that the ANC has played in the appointment of this board. But I think what is most important, at least to the young people watching, is how to make this board accessible to them and to ensure that it works for its mandate. Respond to what our other guests have said as you answer that question as well.
Thank you very much. I think I'll partially agree with Nkanyiso in the sentiments that he has made, to say there is a work that the NYDA has done. And I do not think that it is fair in the institution of the NYDA to say it does not do any work, to say that there are no people that have been assisted by the NYDA. And going to my brother Mandla, I do not know why would you choose to be married to lies, because the issue of the processes of appointing the board is public. Everyone had a chance. We had journalists who applied, we had politicians who applied, we had ordinary citizens, ordinary young people who applied. Everyone was part of the process. And I do not know if you want to imply that just because you may be a member of the ANC Youth League or a leader of the ANC Youth League, you are not qualified. I want you to maybe one day, not today, give us a brief of these candidates that have been appointed in the NYDA board, and tell us if they are not qualified young people who have done very well in the institutions that they've led, in the organizations that they've led, and who can be able to take the NYDA forward. And I'll agree with Nkanyiso as well to say it is very pleasing to see young women taking charge of the NYDA, because it is for the very first time ever that such an institution is led by the chairperson of the board, who's a young woman, is led by a deputy chairperson of the board, who's also a young woman. I think what needs to happen is that young people generally who are activists, not activists of the ANC, maybe social activists, maybe gender activists, young people generally who are activists must make it their duty and their responsibility to make young people in the rural areas, make young people in wherever young people are, make young people aware of such institutions that can assist them. And to say that there is not, that it is very reckless to say that the NYDA has no use, the NYDA must just close up. It's very reckless to say that, because there are young people currently who are studying through the Solomon Mahlangu Scholarship Fund who are assisted by this very NYDA. So if you say the NYDA must close shop, what are you saying about the future of these young people who are assisted? What are you saying about the future of young people who are in business, who have been assisted and got grant from the NYDA? I think what we need to do as the activists, generally activists of young people who are activists, what we need to do is we must make it our duty to make young people aware of such institutions, to challenge these institutions to do better. Because to say that they have not done anything, it is incorrect. They've done a lot of work. Right. The previous board that was led by Sizophila and the late Baveli Lehlonga did outstanding job. Now this board we expect it to do even more better, but it's not going to do better if activists are going to fold their arms and point fingers.
Look, the track record of the NYDA is, I guess, contested, but what I'm sure we can all agree on is the fact that young people in this country need a solution and need it desperately. One can only hope that part of those answers will come from a solution to the quagmire around this board and this agency. But that's the time we have for our discussion. I'm hoping many more other discussions will take place in the near future. For now, youth activist Nkanyiso Ngqulunga, Sizophila Mkhize, who is the ANC Youth League's national spokesperson, and the EFF Student Command President Mandla Shikwambana. To all three of you, thanks very much indeed for your time.